Neoconservatives are the group that took over U.S. foreign policy 30 years ago at the end of the Soviet Union. This neoconservative group said, oh, okay, our rival is gone. We now are the sole superpower. We run the world. We are the hegemon, to use the term that the international relations types use, or as the military in the U.S. says, we have full spectrum dominance. Now, the idea was 30 years ago already, we can basically do what we want. And they have tried in Iraq. They have tried in Syria, they have tried in Libya, they have tried in Afghanistan. And what they've tried to do is to say the US runs the show. It fails all the time. When it comes to this war in Ukraine, this has been brewing for 3 decades as well, because the terms of Gorbachev ending the Soviet Warsaw Pact military alliance was that NATO would not take advantage of that, but would also stay where it was. The phrase that was used to Gorbachev was, NATO will not move 1 inch to the east. Of course, as soon as the Soviet Union ended, the United States neocons said, we can do what we want. We don't have to honor any agreement, and they started NATO enlargement. First to Central Europe, probably acceptable and understandable, but to Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, these were countries that had been dominated by the Soviet Union. They're not close to Russia. They weren't any direct threat to Russia to have them as part of NATO. But then, starting in the 2000s with George W. Bush Jr., who really was the neocon administration par excellence, with Cheney as his vice president, the one who made the Iraq War, for example, they enlarged NATO to 7 more countries: Romania, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Now, that's coming pretty close to Russia, and Russia kept saying, don't do this. It's provocative. You told us you never would. You're getting to our borders. You're threatening our security. And then in 2008, George Bush actually did the horror, though privately, of the Europeans, said, we're going to expand NATO to Ukraine and to Georgia. If the NATO alliance expanded to Georgia and Ukraine, the idea was and would be to encircle Russia in the Black Sea, because you'd have NATO in Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and Georgia. You'd actually encircle the Russian naval fleet, and as U.S. neocon strategists said, that would end Russia as any kind of even regional power. It couldn't project any kind of power, even naval, in the Eastern Mediterranean. That was the idea. The Russians were beside themselves, and Putin said in the 2008 Bucharest NATO summit to Bush, to his face, if you do this, we will take Crimea, because that is for us core security. Americans are incredibly arrogant at this governmental level. They believe they don't have to listen to anybody. But you know, there was a breathing space in 2010 because a pro-Russian president was elected in Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, and he said, we should be neutral. We don't want to be caught in a trap between the United States and Russia. We will be neutral. But that's not good enough for America. You're either with us or you're against us. So the United States worked pretty hard to overthrow Yanukovych in the so-called Maidan in late 2013 and early 2014. The moment that Yanukovych was overthrown, then the U.S. recognized the next pro-Western government, and all of the talk of neutrality was thrown aside. Suddenly it was, we want to be part of NATO. Well, what do you know? And then, as Putin had said, if you go forward this way, I need to take back Crimea, because that is absolutely core national security. And he did. Then the United States poured in for 7 years heavy NATO weaponry, which is why the Ukrainians are fighting so effectively right now, because the U.S. has been funding and advising and providing intelligence to the Ukrainian military for 7 years. This is a proxy war between the United States and Russia. The Ukrainians are dying, but it's the U.S. weaponry and it's the U.S. intelligence and it's the U.S. operations, it's the U.S. funding that is at the essence of this war. And I called the White House and I said, please negotiate. The White House said, no, this is Ukraine's right. This is ridiculous because what we did was trap Ukraine in a devastating proxy war. And it is a bad outcome for Ukraine because Ukraine would have been peaceful and it would have been secure, and it is worse than ever right now.